compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And in line with our theme, we will seek to strengthen and advance the international efforts to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. South Africa's presidency of the G20 will be the first time for an African country to preside over this most important body of the G20. We will use this moment to bring development priorities of the African continent and more broadly the global South more firmly onto the agenda of the G20. In this regard, we will build on the work of the most recent G20 presidencies of Brazil in 2024, of India in 2023, and of Indonesia, which also happened in 2022. We will use our G20 presidency to secure urgent progress on shared goals through the number of priority actions that we have identified. First, we must take action to strengthen disaster resilience. And this has to do with the actions that we will seek the G20 to address when it comes to climate change, so that we just go beyond talking about climate change and begin to address the damage that is caused as climate change devastates countries, economies, and the lives of ordinary people. The increasing rate of climate-induced natural disasters is affecting many countries around the world, with the devastating impact of those countries that cannot afford the costs of recovery as well as rebuilding. We will elevate this issue to the leader level, calling for the global community, including the international financing institutions, as well as the development banks and the private sector, to scale up on post-disaster reconstruction. Second, we must take action to ensure debt sustainability for your low-income countries. A key obstacle to inclusive growth is in developing economies, including in our own African countries, is an unsustainable level of debt, which continues to limit their ability to invest in infrastructure, in healthcare, in education, and other development needs of their people. Building on G20 initiatives undertaken in recent years, we will seek to advance sustainable solutions to tackle high structural deficits and liquidity challenges and extend debt relief to developing economies that are struggling under the burden of debt. We will also seek to address the issue of sovereign wealth, sovereign credit ratings, and fair and transparent processes to address high-risk premiums for developing economies. Third, we must mobilize finance for a just energy transition. We will seek to secure agreement on increasing the quality and quantity of climate finance flows to developing economies. This would include strengthening multilateral development banks and enhancing and streamlining support for country platforms such as the Just Energy Transition, which we call the JET, and more effectively leveraging private capital. Fourth, we must work together to harness critical minerals for inclusive growth and development as well. As minerals extraction accelerates in a number of countries to match the needs of the energy transition, it is crucial to ensure that the countries and local economies that are endowed with these resources are the ones that benefit the most. We will use this G20 to champion the use of critical minerals as an engine of growth and for the development of our continent, as our continent is rich and richly endowed with these critical minerals. South Africa's G20 will pursue progress on cross-cutting issues through the establishment of 3 dedicated task forces. The first task force is inclusive growth at the economic level, industrialization, employment, and reduced inequality. The second task will deal with food security, and the third with artificial intelligence, data governance, and innovation for sustainable development. It is critical for South Africa that the G20 remains focused on its core responsibilities to address global economic and financial challenges that face the world. It should not replace existing international institutions, as well as platforms such as the United Nations and various associated bodies. At the same time, G20 initiatives should in the main support, not diminish, the responsibilities that countries have to deliver on sustainable development goals, on climate action and other commitments that they make in various forums. To ensure that the G20 remains focused, South Africa will not create any new working groups or permanent structures. We will build on the previous presidencies and provide momentum to existing structures and processes. We will reflect on the impact of the G20 over the last 20 years and positioning that the G20 has taken to enhance its impact over the next 20-year cycle. We will balance an ambitious developmental agenda against the need to achieve sufficient consensus on key issues. It is important for South Africa that our G20 presidency is seen as inclusive. Dialogue with civil society and other non-governmental organizations will be conducted through various engagement groups. And these engagement groups are organized according to sectors such as business, labor, civil society, parliamentary bodies, as well as the judiciary. These engagement groups will also include scientific bodies, think tanks, audit institutions, as well as institutions of higher learning like universities, and specific groups of women and youth matters, including issues that have to do with disability, and yes, be able to address vulnerable groups such as the LGBTQIA+ communities. South Africa intends to support the creation of new engagement groups that will deal with some of the key existential issues that impact on the economies of various countries. This will highlight the creative, cultural, financial, and innovative capacities that our own country has to give when it comes to small and medium enterprises as well as cooperatives, and also how these operate in rural areas as well as in the townships where our people live. Following the approach of the Brazilian presidency, a G20 social forum will be convened. This will bring together representatives of the existing engagement groups and other segments of civil society. South Africa firmly believes that civil society, in the end, serves a bridge between the G20 leaders and the people who have the greatest interest in its deliberations. So South Africa's presidency will culminate in the G20 Presidency Leaders Summit, which will take place here in Johannesburg, not here in Johannesburg, in Johannesburg, up north, in November 2025. This will bring together the leaders of the G20 countries, African Union, European Union, and also those who will have been invited. The Leaders Summit will deliberate on critical issues arising from the various working groups and task forces and initiatives and engagements that will have been taking place through the course of the year. So the Leaders Summit will adopt, in the end, a declaration reflecting the collective views of the G20 countries and the common actions they will need to take to address the most important challenges facing the world today. So through this presidency, South Africa has a valuable opportunity to advance efforts towards greater global economic growth and sustainable development. It also has an important role to play in bringing to bear to the table for full discussion issues that will matter most or that matter most to our own continent and to the global south. But it also gives us an opportunity collectively as South Africans to have an influence on some of the development trajectories that we would like to see in the world. Over the course of the year, there will be more than 130 meetings that will be held in our country, in all our provinces. Tens of thousands of people from nearly 30 countries and representatives from over 20 regional and international bodies will arrive in our country over the course of our G20 presidency. So the G20 presidency, therefore, is an opportunity to present to the world the great opportunities and experiences that South Africa has to offer. That is why we've dubbed this the G20 of the people of South Africa, as we want the people of South Africa to embrace this whole process of the G20 as theirs and to get involved in ways that will enhance our participation and our leadership of the G20. The social summit that was held in Brazil involved some 47,000 people participating in a number of iterations. We may be a much smaller population size than Brazil, but if they could do 47,000, I do believe that we can also do 47,000 and more, because we have a civil society that is very active, very inquisitive, very, very intelligent, and very noisy. So we would like them to get involved in this whole process. And I'm sure through all of you who are gathered here, as also members of civil society, and having all these wonderful ideas, you will also want, well, let me not say want, I will want you to participate. That is a forum that we have created so that we can hear your views and not always just hear your questions, but hear your views as well. We look forward to welcoming our friends and partners from all over the world to our beautiful country. Through South Africa's G20 presidency, we will work to build a better Africa and a better world and to ensure that no one is left behind. The two ministers who are sitting up front here, Minister Enoch Godongwan, the Minister of Finance, and Minister Ronald Lamula, the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, will be leading our G20 process. On their shoulders will rest the responsibility of making our G20 successful. And I know for sure, through the very capable execution of tasks of principally the three departments in government, the presidency, as led by Director General Baleni in the presidency, as well as DERCO, as well as Treasury, we will be able to present the most impressive G20. As we have gone around the other G20s, we have learned a great deal. And they have gone there with their eyes wide open to see what they can learn, as they know that this is a great moment for South Africa. We will be having easily more than 40 or so heads of states coming to South Africa all at the same time, as well as their various ministers and officials. So 2025 is going to be a very busy year for us as South Africa. And I would like to call on all of us to work together and to make this a most successful G20. Where government falters and where there are areas where we can do better, I would like to hear views and suggestions from as many South Africans as possible. So this is the launch, therefore, for our G20. And we say with open arms, we welcome the world to come to South Africa and let the games begin. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Unfortunately, Mr. President, I'd like to keep you on that podium for the Q&A, but I'll let you just have a sip of water before we commence with the Q&A. While the President is taking a breather and having a sip of water, I'd just like to acknowledge the two Sherpas who are supporting our G20 Sherpa. And our G20 Sherpa is the DG of International Relations and Cooperation, DG Zane Dango. The two Sue Sherpas are Advocate Nogukanya Jele, who is the special advisor to the President on international relations matters, as well as legal matters. She works alongside Ambassador Mapongo, who is our guru when it comes to multilateral issues and platforms, and they both supporting DG Dango. And that's where most of the hard work happens in the G20. The Sherpas and the Sue Sherpas do the hardest part of the G20, the part that is never visible to cameras and for all of us to see. So colleagues, you are welcome, and thank you for making the time to join us. So at this stage, we will now commence with the question and answer session. And as the President has indicated, if you feel you don't want to ask a question, you'd rather give him an idea or a view on the G20, please feel free to do that. As I indicated earlier on, colleagues, we are constrained in terms of time because of the Binational Commission with Nigeria that the President is co-chairing. So if we could just please be courteous and stick to one question so that as many of you will be able to pose questions and pose ideas to the President. Also feel free to pose questions to the ministers who are here. The President will not take offense if you ask them questions. So, Mr. President, I'll invite you to the podium again as I point to our veteran newsmen who will have the first bite of the questions. Peter Fabricius. Or before Peter starts, if we can just introduce ourselves, even though we know some of you, just introduce yourself and the media house you represent, and then go ahead and pose your questions. So, Peter.
Thanks, Vincent. Peter Fabricius, Daily Maverick. Mr. President, you spelled out here how South Africa will be building on what has been the kind of developmental G20 agenda from Indonesia, India, Brazil, and now South Africa. Are you not concerned, though, that you will be followed by the United States of America and the President is not terribly developmentally oriented, and that may disrupt your agenda both during the year and also when you hope to bequeath an agenda to the next G20 presidency, which will be over the United States. Thank you.
Zianda?
In terms of any concerns that you might be having from a trade perspective, you've already, been speaking quite a bit about the fact that the G20, it constitutes 75% of the world's GDP, and perhaps then Minister Ndakalaban can also weigh in on this. Do you have any concerns about even bilateral agreements with countries such as the United States, but also linked to that? You mentioned in your remarks about geopolitical tensions, and I've spoken to your spokesperson this morning about whether you have any concerns about the ICG case and ICG.
If there should be education sector, and I wanted to know, seeing that South Africa is going to be the first African country to get up the position, will you see a prioritization of African intelligence from African universities to help the global south, instead of relying on Western institutions, instead of being sourced from our own? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. President, we'll take those three for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Peter, I would like to say that we take over the presidency of the G20 from India, which took over from Indonesia. And the strength of the G20 really is that each declaration that encompasses the outcomes of discussions in the various working groups builds on previous declarations. And you will find that even the declaration from the Indonesian G20 built on what was also discussed in Japan. And that presents a body of information, a body of precedent that the G20 hardly really ever deviates from. heard me say we are going to seek to conduct a review of the past G20s. We said as much when we accepted the presidency of the G20, and in that review, we will seek to, on a theme-by-theme basis, review the decisions that were taken on climate change, on global trade, on human rights, and on a whole range of issues, and try to track the logic and the thinking throughout the years. And what we have is that there's always been a forward movement, and there's always been progress that has been made as the G20 has had to deal with existential issues that affect various parts of the world. So I'm least concerned about how our own G20 will be seen, and I don't believe that what will have been decided here will be diluted. And in fact, as we work with the United States in the Troika being composed of the past president of the G20, India, yes, at the moment it's been India, Brazil, and ourselves. And now it will be Brazil, South Africa, and the United States. And we will stay in the Troika for 2 years as the United States and the forthcoming nation then leads the G20. So all the wonderful decisions will rub off on those who will follow. And we will be able, through the various working groups, through our Sherpas and Shoe Sherpas, be able to remind everyone the decisions that have been taken. So I see very little room for any major break with what the G20 will have. And one of the processes that is evolving is that we will seek to get sufficient consensus on decisions that need to be taken by the G20. So I think there will be sufficient shock absorbers that will be put in place to enable the G20 to continue to function in a way that will advance the interests of the world. And remember, through the G20, we are not advancing the interests of one single country. We are advancing the interests of the people of the world, collectively represented in the G20. Zianda, you want to know whether our participation, if I got you right, but I think the one that I got right was the issue of the ICJ, whether our having launched a case at the ICJ level will have an impact. I do not believe it will have an impact. Everybody knows what South Africa's stance has been on a number of issues, ranging from the ICJ and our stance on the question of Israel and Palestine, also on our stance on the wars that continue to take place in the world, that we are a peace-loving country, but also have taken up the role of being a peacemaker where we can, and coming forward, working with others, and working with various other institutions in the world, particularly continental as well as global institutions such as the UN, as well as the African Union, that we work for peace. And we do this through the neutrality position that we have adopted as member of the non-aligned movement. And that in many ways has given us quite a lot of leverage, because in various conflicts, we have been able to talk to both sides, much as it has tended to upset others. But when they fully realize the role that we play, they appreciate South Africa's role in various troublesome conflicts And so therefore, the bilateral agreements that we have, particularly say, for instance, AGOA, we see ourselves continuing to participate in that, largely also because it's a mutually beneficial trade deal. We benefit, and on the other side, the country that has signed up to this to give African countries free trade entry also benefits. So I hardly think that one will want to cut one's nose to spite one's face. So I see this as mutually beneficial. Then my sister Isaacs, I didn't get the first name, wants to know whether we will prioritize, for instance, the participation of bodies such as universities. In fact, I have expressed my deep desire to meet with all vice chancellors of universities, all our universities, just to mobilize them to get involved in the G20 processes. They are a reservoir of extremely clever people, people who are creative, people who can come up with a lot of ideas in the various areas that the G20 presidency of South Africa is going to participate in. And I'd like to bring their intellectual prowess to bear to enhance our own G20 presidency. So I will want them through their various institutions, either intelligence, artificial intelligence, or technology, or science, or whatever, to participate in the G20. So I've expressed to the Minister of Higher Education that I want to meet all our vice chancellors so that they immediately should start thinking about the contribution that they can make to enhance the interests of our country when it comes to areas of their own speciality, given the themes that we have committed ourselves to addressing, including the priorities that we have set out as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. We'll take another round of 3 questions. Tolani. Yeah, Tolani, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to find out if the government, through the Minister of Finance, if it has quantified the cost of the G20. It's unlike any other series of engagements that South Africa has had before, although we do have a good track record of hosting international events. And this is because there has been that question that will the costs be borne by municipalities? We've seen that India, for example, has spent well over $100 million with a posted it, that was the least that was spent at that time. And also, has the president found a golf course that is suitable for the US president-elect? And if he is going to make his way personally here to make it his first international trip to Africa.
Thank you, Kolani. Yes, my sister over there. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Mara Sizilopoulos Sokratini. My question is, in what ways will South Africa ensure that the perspectives of African nations are prioritized, especially when it comes to economic inequality, and also what conversations will the presidency lead within the member states and also globally?
Thank you. Last question from our colleague from
Turkmen as representing Turkish Unit. Mr. President, South Africa hosting numerous international events is not other countries are capable to do it. You hosting BRICS and the G20, and you are a natural mediator because of your maybe historical past, maybe because of apartheid. You are doing it successfully. And but your people, your own people, African people, asking very basic question: what is for me? I spent quite a long years here. So, what is your strategy to ensure that your own people are really benefiting from this international gathering? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Take those 30 seconds. Thank you.
Well, the Minister of Finance will be best placed to answer the question, but I'm going to answer it for him, lest he's tempted to make a commitment that has fiscal consequences. He's only supposed to make fiscal consequential announcements when he delivers his budget. So, money has been allocated for us to be able to host the G20. But we've been very fortunate, like many other countries that have hosted, in that we've received various offers of support, both in terms of helping us sharpen the content, but also helping us host some of the meetings. We should have said that the meetings in totality are possibly going to be about 230, with 130 of them being held here in South Africa. So, for instance, the UN system will host some of the meetings in New York and various other places, Geneva, all around the theme or the process of South Africa hosting the G20. So they will shoulder that burden. And many other friendly countries that have always been friends of the G20, and a number of them are Northern Hemisphere countries, and some of them are in other parts of the world. So we are fortunate in that, much as we will shoulder most of the burden financially, we are also going to get quite a bit of support. The private sector will also come to the fore. And we welcome this because this is a South African event. And we want as much as possible for all various sectors of our country to chip in. For instance, if a trade union movement feels that we need to hold a meeting in a beautiful hall or whatever, they will lay that out, and they will also fund that process of ensuring that there's water, there's proper screens, and so forth and so forth. So we are going to have the benefit of being well supported in all this. We quantified the exact amount, a ballpark figure, yes. However, because we are going to get so much support, that will be quantifiable as we go on. But in the end, there will be full accountability on what it will have cost us. But we will be able to cost effectively host this summit and not have it as expensive as other manifestations that we've had in the past. Have identified a golf course. We have so many beautiful golf courses in our country, possibly better than many other countries. And when I spoke to President Trump, congratulating him, I informed him that he will need to come to South Africa. And in fact, I invited him to come to South Africa for a state visit, as well as when he comes to attend the G20. And obviously work will ensue in seeing how best that can be achieved. But we do expect him to attend, as America or the United States is the next president of the G20. So I look forward to handing over the gavel to President Trump as he takes over the reins of being the G20 leader. So if he has time, and he has a very busy schedule, and when he can go and hit some balls on the golf course, we will point him in the right direction in one of the beautiful courses that we have. And we might find that there's a lot of competition amongst our golf courses on where President Trump and possibly myself can go and play golf and talk about global matters. Bongani asks about the perspectives of, say, our continent are, and how will we advance those perspectives, including for countries in our region. We have dubbed this G20 as a great moment for our continent, as well as for the global South. We've been unapologetic about that. Most of the countries that are in the G20 are your more developed economy countries that reside, if you like, in the global North. And we have said this is the first time it's happening on our continent in Africa. And therefore, we want to, not only in terms of optics, we wanted to have African flavor in substance, in issues that will be tackled, development issues, and all that. So we will want the key issues that will be advanced in the G20 to have a bearing on the global South as well as our own continent, and to put forward perspectives of our continent so that we get the world to fully understand the challenges that the world faces. So we're looking forward to showcasing Africa as well as the global South on the map more fully. Indonesia did, India did, and Brazil did. Then we will be doing so from the perspective of the African continent as well, and highlighting and identifying the needs and the challenges that our continent is facing. And a colleague from Turkey, I didn't get your name, what benefit will ordinary people derive from us hosting the G20? In the end, we are bringing the world to Africa, to South Africa, and they will be traveling in various groupings over the full 12 months. And all those people, as they travel, they will get to see South Africa in its great splendor, and also South Africa in the various challenges that it faces. And we will bring to bear how we believe some of those challenges can be met. So we will be putting forward the South Africa as it exists now, and the South Africa that we would want. And we would therefore underpin everything that we do by saying, we want you to work with us. We want you to cooperate with us so that we can grow this country and address the challenges that our country faces. Many countries face various challenges. So the coming of the G20 here, we would like to see as promoting further investment in our country. We, in the end, must advance our own national interests first, and also advance the interests of our continent. And in the end, we would want to see, therefore, investment as we showcase our own country, and as we showcase opportunities that those who come to our country can have. And as we showcase our system of government, is very interesting, the way we've navigated our way from apartheid tyranny right through to now. It tells a very interesting story to people, and how we've built our institutions, some of which institutions will be presenting at the G20 processes. And as they see how our country is governed and how well our institutions work, we believe that it will instill further confidence in them to want to invest. They will see that we're a stable country in a sea of tectonic challenges that are taking place globally. That here is an oasis of peace, an oasis of democracy, and an oasis of great attraction to investments as we reform our own economy and we make it better for investment. So all that, attracting investors to come to our country just by hosting the G20 process here, should be able to lead to job creation, should be able to lead to further trade, and improve the performance of our economy. So it must never be seen as some just conference where people come in and go. We will be focusing on crowding them in. And if we have a special glue that will be attached to their feet, we will want to use it so that they stay here and leave their money here. So that's what we are interested in. We want to empty their pockets so that they leave their money here and invest here so that we can create jobs for our people. And I'm sure that all of you agree that as South Africa, this is what we need to focus on. I'm not going to ask if anybody disagrees, but I am sure that everybody agrees to this very noble objective. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, we're going to take the last round of 3 questions. We're going to take one last round of questions, colleagues. We'll start with Vuyo Mvogo. The mic is on its way to you, Vuyo.
Thank you, Leon Gogo. I think the President answered the question of the things. I was wondering when 71 I had in debate, I was wondering what happened to the other 70 odd meetings that Brazil had. Then the other question is you're not going to create new task groups, only 3. But then you also said that you're looking at new engagement groups. Who are those new ones? Engagement groups, as you call them. So I want to check from which sectors and why, if you are committed to not creating new task force.
Thank you, Vuyo. Let's see. Before I give you a second bite, Peter, I was going to see who hasn't had an opportunity. Okay, looks like, yes, Peter.
Thanks, Vincent. Mr. President, you're going to go and meet President Tinubu of Nigeria shortly after this. Nigeria has expressed a desire to join the G20, and it's also, there's been some Nigerian media that they will put a request to you to take up their cause. Is that something that you would accept? An invitation from Nigeria to plead for their membership? Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. And last question. Okay, it looks like that's it.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. President, over to you. Thank you.
Vuyo, yes, you're right. I mean, as I say once again, the other meetings will take place out of South Africa in various institutions and various countries. In fact, we've been rather fortunate because some countries have actually come forward to say, allow us to hold this meeting, say in our country, either Norway, Singapore, and South Korea, and so forth, and some of them the AU and others. So that in itself is good fortune for South Africa. We will still be leading the process and chairing those meetings, but we are having a great deal of the outflow of generosity and support and really good feeling towards our country, so that that we welcome. New engagement groups fully still to be determined. I mean, some of them will be on things like, a finer aspect of food security. We've now been dealing with poisoned food, foodborne diseases that have led to death. There may well be a need, as we look at food security, to look at a subgroup that will deal with the issue of food safety, which for us is going to be very important, but which is also going to be very important for countries in the global south and countries on our continent, because it's possible that it's an area that we may not have been paying close attention to, to raise the level of consciousness for all, that as we buy food, we need to look at the labeling. When does it say that food expires by such and such a day? We hardly ever do that. We just buy food, open the package, and consume. And yet, when you look at the labeling, it immediately makes you to halt. So we would like to raise consciousness about that, because food of whatever type does have a deterioration effect. And once it deteriorates, it becomes toxic, I would say. I would hazard to say, though I'm not a scientist. The same thing applies to medicines. And we often utilize medication and don't pay attention to the labeling that is put by manufacturers, that you must use this item and it reaches its expiry date by the. So subgroups like those are a great possibility to that by raising the level of consciousness and the level of attention, and also how the laws, as the regulatory framework applies to all these matters. It's not that there's an absence or a paucity of such groupings, but we will want to deal with the key ones of a contemporary nature and also of an existential nature. So that will be determined as we move on. In relation to the question from Peter, Nigeria is a valued sister country, and we're very pleased that we're having this binational commission with them this morning. And they have a desire to be part of the G20, which we will support. We supported the entry of the African Union years ago. We were the first keen supporters of the AU becoming part of the G20, and we're pleased that as we repeated that message, it was appropriated by many others, and finally they agreed that the AU should be a member of the G20. So it has to start somewhere, and Nigeria will be keenly supported by us because we've been a member of the G20 as a lone voice for the longest time. We've now been joined by the AU. We're very pleased, but there are specific key countries on our continent that are sister countries that also needs to be brought within the fold so that we can raise the voice from Africa, the neglected continent for the longest time. We have a voice, we have a presence, and we are going to be the biggest growth story in years to come. And our population is going to grow by leaps and bounds. And therefore, as a continent, we are going to be a big noise. And we want that big noise to be recognized in the form of countries that will become part of the G20 right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Colleagues, that brings us to the end of this G20 media launch. I'd like to thank you sincerely. I know in Cape Town you don't start very early, but thank you for making it nonetheless. And many thanks to the ministers who've joined the president, the director generals, the SU Sherpas who are here. Thank you very much, colleagues, and have a wonderful day. Mr. President, you may take leave of us, joined by the ministers. Thank you. said in the amendment, we will have this process.
We have that security from our trends.
The process was very easy, so I appreciated that.
Yes. Yes. Indeed. Indeed. You don't need to sit here.
You may be seated. Thank you. Very warm welcome to Your Excellency, President of the Republic of South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa, and we also recognize the honorable ministers who are here with us this morning. The Minister of Finance, Minister Enoch Godongwana, the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Minister Ronald Lamola. I'd also like to recognize the Director Generals who are with us this morning. The Director General in the Presidency, Ms. Pindi Valeni, the Director General for the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, Mr. Zane Dangle. We also have in our midst ambassadors and senior officials from the Presidency, from the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, and most importantly, let me welcome all of you, ladies and gentlemen of the media. The G20 is the premier forum for international economic cooperation. It plays an important role in shaping and strengthening global architecture and governance on all major international economic issues. On the 1st of December, South Africa assumed the presidency of the G20. This morning, the president will outline South Africa's priorities in the course of its presidency. But before we invite the president to the podium, we would like to first present to you the G20 website, the logo, and a short video clip that positions South Africa's presidency of the G20. Without taking up too much time, I'd like to invite the head of public diplomacy at DIRCO and my dear brother, Jason Manyela, to take us through the website and the logo.
Vincent is a bit taller than I am. Mr. President, Minister Godongwana and Minister Lamola, DGs, the G20 Sherpa, Sue Sherpa, members of the media. I have a very simple task of taking you through the logo that South Africa has settled on for the South African presidency of the G20. So we went through a process to look at what would inform the logo. The requirements for the development of the logo was the following. There was a consideration that the logo must reflect the country's identity. The logo should showcase the country's landscape, beauty, and capabilities as a tourism and investment destination of choice. It should also reflect the country as a flourishing democracy, a multicultural and diverse nation, and that the logo must also reflect the G20 South Africa presidency theme, which is solidarity, equality, and sustainability. So some of the key elements of the South Africa G20 logo: one, the national flower, the king protea. The cultural significance of the king protea, which is the national flower, is that one, it is intertwined with South African culture. Secondly, its crown-like petals evoke pride and identity. It also represents hope and regeneration. You would notice that it regenerates after fires, symbolizing renewal and hope. It also reflects our country's resilience in overcoming hardships. It is a reminder of growth and new beginnings even during adversity. Of course, it's a flower, so it's naturally beautiful. It is striking and captures attention and represents the breathtaking South African landscape. It symbolizes South Africa's intention to deliver a positive and solution-driven G20 presidency. You will also notice when we unveil it that the logo incorporates the colors of the South African flag, which represents our country's diverse heritage and cultural vibrancy. The other thing you will notice is that it's semicircular. The semicircular design of our logo symbolizes unity, inclusion, and global collaboration. And here is the logo. The other thing, oh, this is the part where you clap. Thank you very much. You're a good congregation. The other part is that there is a tagline or theme device that has been developed to go with the logo. The tagline device is framed by an African-inspired pattern, emphasizing the G20 South African presidency's theme while introducing a cultural element. Already spoken about the theme, solidarity, equality, and sustainability. Just going to show you how we apply it on various platforms, just to give you an idea. The last one being Vincent's favorite, the T-shirt, golf shirt that we are going to be doing. Just to conclude then, to just mention that the South African logo has legal protection arising from various acts of parliament and international agreements and protocols. South Africa is a party to the Paris Convention for the Protection of Industrial Property. Also, just to mention that the logo, the tagline device, and guidelines are available on the G20 website. In 1 minute, I will then speak to the website and what it offers. Number one, the G20 presidency website has the following objectives. It serves as a resource on G20 information, such as the history of its formation, its member states and processes. It serves as a platform for the G20 president to outline high-level deliverables and priorities, as well as its calendar of meetings for the duration of its presidency. It also serves as a platform to promote the country as a destination of choice for business, tourism, and investment. Some of the features then, one, it is fully responsive. It automatically adapts to the screen size and device. It is